Welcome everybody to Firearms Commentaries of Resident Evil Chris Rebirth, Episode 5. And we've finally arrived at the Guardhouse, and lo and behold, we are greeted with an immediate puzzle. This one's entirely optional, of course, though there's going to be one later that is not optional. And, you know, I never really mentioned this before when it comes to Resident Evil puzzles, but I think the pushing puzzles, like pushing statues or crates, it's just a huge waste of time. It's not like a fetch quest where you can, like, go at your own pace. You have to go through this long, drawn-out process of pushing something across a room, and it's just a bit annoying. But right, so what are we doing here in the guardhouse, you may wonder? Well, we're here for one key item. That's literally the only reason we're here. To find a single key item, and then we're heading back to the mansion. It seems a bit odd when you think about it. You have to go through this huge journey just to get one item in order to continue your journey in the main part of the game. I can't really think of any games at the top of my head that pulled that kind of stuff, but there are probably plenty of games that have made you do that. Possibly Half-Life, where you had to go through that whole effort of powering on some electricity system and then injecting oxygen into fuel, and then you go all the way back to the blast furnace to turn on rocket engines and blast a tentacle monster. But here, no, we're just going through a scary guardhouse to find a key. I guess it all ends up pretty well, though, considering that the guardhouse has some of my most favorite ambient music in the game, particularly the dormitory and the hall theme. So I guess all of it. Not to mention there are some rather memorable monsters here. And with the protectors of the key annihilated, I shall steal away the small key in the cup. You know, this game is really obsessed with its keys. You know, as a Resident Evil fan, you know what I should do? I should go find someone or learn how to forge keys and basically make replicas of the keys in this game. You know, color them, make them out of actual metal, and just hang them on the wall. That'd be kind of cool, actually. What's this? Oh look, a zombie. What a surprise. Yeah, they added a zombie to come out of the water. Big deal. It's a zombie. I mean, with a shotgun in your hand, do you really fear zombies? Do you honestly? Oh look, more zombies. Oh yeah, I don't know what the thing is, the acid, that barf attack that they do. In order to avoid that attack, you have to blow into the microphone to basically blow their barf back in their face. And the thing is, since this was on an emulator again, this is going back to when I was giving Richard CPR. It didn't exactly go so well since the mic wasn't working the way I wanted it to, so expect to see that happening quite a bit. In fact, I think the only way I managed to get through that was by blowing really hard into the microphone to the point where my throat went cold because it was so dry. So yeah, while we have plenty of time to kill, I might as well go on about a particular topic. And what I wanted to talk about today was pacing. Particularly pacing in horror games. Now, it's no secret that Resident Evil doesn't really have much pacing. I mean, right off the bat, you're already in this situation where you're, you know, being chased by monsters. Resident Evil 1 had a teeny bit of pacing, but in Resident Evil 2 and 3, you're immediately attacked by monsters. Resident Evil 4 brought it back a bit, so did Resident Evil 5. So at the very least, they did learn from their mistakes a little bit. Well, what is the importance of pacing, you might wonder? Well, think about it like this. When you think about a falling building, for example, in real life, if you saw a tall skyscraper fall down, you'd be shocked, right? Because it just doesn't happen that often. But if you saw buildings falling since, you know, square one, then it just loses its effect really fast. Something that normally should be utterly shocking, something that really should have an effect on you, doesn't really come like that to you anymore because it's just not special. Pacing is basically what makes everything more potent. It makes the elements of the game, the monsters, the sound effects and everything, it just makes that all the more interesting because it comes in a stark contrast to those moments where nothing really happens or you don't really see anything that threatens you directly. Pacing also goes hand in hand with atmosphere, as well as the fact that it can actually help save the scary factor in a video game, like, you know, Dead Space, for example. Dead Space pretty much shot itself in the foot because it really depended too much on gore and scary monster designs. And it ultimately paid the price because, really, it's kind of like the case of Resident Evil 4. If you're honestly scared by that, then I'm sorry, you just don't have any balls. Well, metaphorically speaking, if you're a woman. Anyhow, document time. Plant 42 report. 4 days have passed since the accident, and the plant at Point 42 is growing amazingly fast. It has been affected by the T-virus differently than other plants have been, and shows unique shape in addition to its size. Oh goody, a giant plant. Looking at the way it behaves, it is now difficult to determine what kind of plant it was originally. There are two ways in which Plant 42 gathers nutrition. The first one is through its roots that reach into the basement. Immediately after the accident, a scientist went mad and broke the water tank in the basement. Now the basement is filled with water. It is easily imaginable that some chemical elements were blended in the water, which presumably promoted the incredibly fast growth of Plant 42. Another part of Plant 42 has grown through the air ducts and is now hanging from the ceiling of the first floor, which we saw in the hallways. This part of Plant 42 contains various vines and bulb-like structures which it uses for its second method of gathering nutrition. Upon sensing movement, Plant 42 shoots its vines around its prey and restrains it. It then begins leeching the victim's blood by using the suckers located on the back of its vines. Goody. It also appears to have some intelligence. It has been witnessed using its vines to block doorways when it has either captured prey or is in a state of rest. Several staff members have already fallen victim to this. May 21st, 1998, Harry started. Plant 42 report has been filed. You know, that's interesting to think about. If a plant was really infected with a mutagenic virus, do you really think that it could actually be sentient? Like, being able to move about like a human being could, or an animal? I remember this one story from a show called Beyond Belief, if any of you guys know that show. It was hosted by Jonathan Frakes, the guy who played as Commander Riker from Star Trek The Next Generation. Anyway, the story basically went on about how the plants in this one shop reacted to seeing the murderer after a murder took place in that same shop. Basically, they did this little electrogram test. I'm not really sure what they call those tests, but basically, when the murderer came onto the scene, suddenly the lines on it started getting all erratic, kind of like, you know, a heartbeat that's irregular, indicating that the plant was reacting quite extremely to the presence of the murderer, meaning that it recognized the murderer. So in other words, it means in some way or form, plants are sentient. Not only that, but it turns out plants actually grow more healthily when they listen to decent music. If you play classical music, I don't know how it happens, but they actually grow faster and bigger. They did tests, and although it's not entirely confirmed, it turns out plants react to music. So apparently they have taste in music as well. So if they were mutated and given more abilities, like, you know, a larger body, which I guess you could say is like a larger brain, would they act like an animal or a human being even? That also brings up the IVs from Resident Evil 2 as well, when you think about it. All these experiments, all these theories, all these made-up monsters in horror games, are they really so far-fetched, or are they closer to fact than we know? But whatever the case, we're in a giant aqua ring. And unlike Jill, we don't get a special intro. The Neptune sharks are already out and about and trying to eat us. And of course, if you were dumb enough to leave behind the control room key, then you might as well have just been caught with your trousers on your legs. Now then, here is a bit of a twist. What? Uh-oh. Well, shit. Now, the question you may ask, how the hell that matters, considering the fact that you're not drinking the poisonous water, or whatever. Using the touchscreen, we turn the valve until all 4 circles have been filled. Just another time extender, I guess. Of course, trying to turn this thing on an unsynchronized touchscreen is painful, to say the least. But whatever. We drained the water before it could poison us. Seriously though, what kind of security system not only fills the area with water, but poisons it as well? I guess that would kill Neptune when you think about it, but it also kills everybody in the room. What is it with Umbrella's security policies basically killing everybody in sight? It just seems stupid. Well, then again, I guess it is Umbrella. Now then, here's a new puzzle that replaces a simple button from the original game. You have a series of buttons at the bottom, all going from the number 1 to 9, and you can only use each of the buttons once. The key is to make all the numbers add up to whatever the numbers are listed on the panel itself. So like, for 15, for example, you have to make the numbers add up to 15. Of course, there are other numbers that they're all connected to, so in the end, it's not really that hard. It's just a matter of, you know, experimentation until you figure out which ones go in which places. Considering that the buttons can only be used once, you eventually learn where they have to go and what makes sense. I'm sorry if my explanation basically half-assed that whole concept, but whatever. I'm pretty sure you guys could have figured it out yourselves. I have faith in your abilities to be rational. But right, it takes me a while to figure this out. Well, mostly because it's similar to that one puzzle that you do for the V-Jolt room, because I actually enjoy doing that. I enjoy taking my time with these puzzles. Feels like a nice brain teaser, you could say. But for the sake of everybody's attention spans, I'm just going to go ahead and speed through some of this, considering that the experimentation is pretty useless for anybody who wants to know the answer. And there we go. And with that, we can retrieve the key to the area we need to go to get the key item we came to the guardhouse for in the first place. Yes, indeed. More delaying fetch quests. And now that I think about it, you could actually subtitle the entire horror game series as the fetch quest simulator. I mean, Resident Evil is technically just grabbing the item to go to the next area of the game. It's not a level progression in the traditional sense. You have to get the key or the key card or the emblem. Oh yes, emblems, in order to go to the next area for your Archerberry. And for good measure, ha! Take that, shark, even though you didn't pose a big threat to me. Anyhow, I guess in certain contexts, certain quests like fetch quests are more acceptable, but we can all agree that escort quests can go fuck themselves. Right, moving along. The final dormitory room. Or dormitory. That kind of sounds funny when I say dormitory room. And with my weird meta-knowledge, I know this key is useless. Oh yeah, zombies. Yeah, that's totally special. Indeed. Oh yes, zombies are supposed to be very scary things, don't you know? And file time. Again. V-Jolt report. As I stated in the last report, there are some common features found in the cells of the plant infected by the Tyrant virus. We have also found another interesting fact through some experiments. You don't say. Scientists finding out things through experiments. That's just profound. I never knew that. We found an element that destroys these plant cells rapidly in UMB number 16, one of the series of UMB chemicals that we used for that experiment. So what, you didn't think to, I don't know, use a flamethrower or an aerosol can with a lighter? Just a thought. We named this UMB number 16 V-Jolt. According to our calculations, it will take less than 5 seconds to destroy Plant 42 if we put the V-Jolt directly on its roots. You need to mix some of the UMB chemicals in a specific order to create V-Jolt, but the UMB chemicals may generate a poisonous gas which is harmful to the human body. Extreme caution should be taken when handling these chemicals. Following are the types of UMB series chemicals and their brief characteristics. Nothing important. The Jolt report has been filed. Goody! Now, book is missing. Oh, would you look at that? We just happen to have the book that's missing. Now, onward to fight. Whoa. For God's sakes, man, what is with this game and its giant renditions of everything? Oh, look. Silly Chris.
Rebecca, no, it's no use. The roots of it are in the basement. You could... Whoa!
Chris!
Take this file with you. Use the information in it in order to make the potion. And kill the root. Becca, please.
Chris! Don't die!
That's stupid advice, Rebecca. Anyhow, guys, I'll see you next episode. Sayonara.